Thank you for joining me for today's Late Take. You know, Roman numerals can be interesting, mainly because when you talk about Roman numerals, you replace numbers with letters. For example, I equals 1, V equals 5, X equals 10, and L equals 50. And those are what you would call your benchmark letters. And I know with that explanation, it doesn't seem all that complicated or confusing. But when you start combining those letters, that's when things get tricky. For example, when you take a lesser benchmark letter and you put it in front of a greater one, it subtracts from the overall total. So if you put an I before a V, that equals 4. On the other hand, if you put a lesser benchmark letter behind a greater one, it adds. So if you put a V after an L, you get 55. Now, using all that information I just shared, if we have an I and an X, that means we have a 9. But question for you, how can we get that I and X to equal a 6 by adding just one more letter? You can't, can you? I mean, there's just no way you can put a number either to the front or the back that would make I and X equal 6, right? Not so fast. What if we took an S and added that to the I and X? That would make it a 6, right? Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Ernie, you're not playing fair. S isn't a Roman numeral. But there's the rub. I never said you had to use a Roman numeral. You just assumed it. Now, the purpose of that little exercise was to show that our thinking can become limited when we assume that things can only be one way. When we don't open our minds up to the possibility of there being another way, we miss out on the potential for another perspective. In Matthew 16:23, when Peter attempts to stop Jesus from talking about his impending suffering and death, Jesus responds by saying, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Now that might seem like a harsh response because Peter was only trying to stop his friend from thinking and talking negatively. But Peter also tried to stop Jesus from saying what he was saying because his thinking did not allow him to understand or even believe that Jesus' death would fulfill God's purpose. In that moment, because of his assumptions, Peter didn't see another way. His thinking would not allow for the possibility of a resurrection. Basically, he was thinking like everyone else. Right now, you might be thinking like everyone else too, using logic to approach the challenges you face. You don't see how your addiction can ever be broken. You don't see how your marriage might be restored. You don't see how your finances could ever be secure. Or you don't see how your body could ever be well again. When it comes to that way of thinking, it's no surprise that those challenges seem impossible. But here's some good news. God specializes in the impossible. Where we work in the natural, He works in the supernatural. So we need to stop with the assumptions and work on changing our thinking so that we can entertain the possibility that when we can, God can, and God does.